Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose. And we are rejoined by the tennis guru that is Christian Montegan from the First Serve. Great to have you back, mate. Schedules clashed a bit over the US Open, but we've got here to recap the US Open and talk a bit of national representation.
Yeah, finally reunited after a couple of weeks. It's been hectic sort of schedule the past couple of weeks of US Open. Latest news, having to cover all bits and pieces we mentioned off air. Controversy after controversy. It was just non-stop. It seemed with the US Open. So now transitioning into Davis Cup action. We'll speak about obviously Australia's chances against Belgium and a few other topics to talk about.
Certainly, there is a little bit to pick apart, as you said. It's really in the peak. I mean, tennis kind of never sleeps these days. But from that point of view, let's talk really quickly and just recap the US Open. I guess while there was some interesting results, there was some prize packets making some runs. I don't know if you've got anyone that jumps out at you that you just say, "Wow, look, that was really an impression." But in terms of where we got to with the finals, we saw the world number one and in the women's with Aryna Sabalenka win. We saw Amanda Anisimova make another Grand Slam final back to back. So nothing outrageous there, although Anisimova probably wasn't projected to get that far by a lot. And then on the other side, the men's, it was the guys that just keep turning up in Grand Slam finals. It was Alcaraz winning his sixth Grand Slam final.
Yeah, I think for the women's first, Anna Samova, huge props to her to come back from losing a double bagel in the final at Wimbledon. I mean, people were talking, okay, how long is it going to take her to recover from this? Will it be 6 months? Will it be 12 months? Where's her head going to be at? So to have that quick of a turnaround and to make back-to-back Grand Slam finals, it's a big testament, right? Playing in front of her home country, added pressure. I thought that was an amazing achievement. And when she went 2-love down in that final against Sabalenka, you're thinking, okay, here we go again. The jitters are starting to come. It could be a bit of sense of deja vu, but she really held her nerve. And then being 5-3 down in the second, fought back as well for a second set tie break. So she was really in the contest. And I thought what impressed me the most in the tournament with Anna Samova was her backhand. I think you could probably argue it's one of the best backhand in women's tennis. She's got the pace. I believe she had the fastest backhand throughout the whole tournament. She even eclipsed players like Alcaraz and Sinner. I think she eclipsed Sinner's backhand by a few Ks as well. So her power on that wing is just phenomenal. Just got so much talent in the world. We know she took a bit of time off a couple of years ago for mental health reasons. She's regrouped, got a game together again. I thought she was fantastic, throughout the whole tournament. Beat a couple of Aussies early on throughout the way, in Kim Birrell and Maya Joint, which is unfortunate from an Aussie point of view. But I think if she can really string some more wins together and round out 2025 in a really good way, I mean, WTA final, she should make her debut there in that tournament, which would be another bucket list for her. But looking at Sabalenka as well, deserved champion. I mean, again, pressure on her to defend the title from last year. And there weren't really many lapses in concentration from her, I thought, from Sabalenka. And you probably would have associated that with her more in years gone past, where she goes off the rails a bit. She's searching, serves more double faults, but she was really composed again, and her power. I mean, we've always said this, me and you, Chris, that the game is really virtually always on a racket. Maybe she plays in Osaka on a day. Okay, maybe it's a bit of a 50-50, but Sabalenka just dominates in the back of the court, and she doesn't really have to change her game or vary, because as long as she's hitting winners in the back of the baseline and just dominating point by point, she doesn't have to change much. And that's in contrast to the men's, where Sinner obviously losing another one to Carlos Alcaraz. And it was interesting, Sinner's comments after the game saying, look, if I want to beat this guy, I'm going to have to change my game style. I'm going to have to even, suffer a few defeats. I'm going to have to swallow that pill if I have to improve, if that's what it means to improve and beat Alcaraz more often than not. Because Carlos, for me, in that final just showed so much versatility, drop shots, coming to the net, whatever the case may be. He can do everything right. He's got the full package. And for as good as Sinner is, right, I think we take this for granted because Sinner just sort of breezes through most tournaments, right? But when it comes to against Alcaraz, it's a completely different story. And when you're so comfortable doing what you do for the whole tournament, you're not going to change your style, right, for one play. You're going to fall back on what you used to. And I think that's what Sinner was trying to get at in his post-match press conference. It was great to see him being so open and honest about that. So hopefully for him, Darren Cahill stays on board. There's a bit of talk whether he's going to stay in his camp for 2026, which would be really great for Sinner. So hopefully he can, adjust and tweak a few things. But look, it's going to be a massive rivalry. It already is. And, looking ahead to the next 10 years, it's like, who can stop these two?
Yeah, certainly it's going to be an interesting one. I was really happy to see, as much as he knocked out Alex de Minaur, I was happy to see Felix Auger-Aliassime start to find some form. We obviously know, before Sinner and Alcaraz, he was one of the ones that was tipped to be that next big superstar. So great to see him. And my takeaway, as you said, with Anna Samova, it's only happened once before that someone, has been double bageled in a Grand Slam final. And unfortunately I think she was a 17 or 18-year-old Natasha Zvereva, she never really reached that height again. She won some doubles. I think she won a bronze medal in the doubles at the Olympics a few years later. But so it's great to see Amanda Anisimova quickly shrug that off and actually vanquish the person who dominated her so much. So that's really positive. What about, as I said, FAA? That's a nice story in terms of, Canada. Their tennis has sort of drifted off a little bit after looking like they were ready for a breakthrough only a couple of years ago.
I was really high on Felix a few years ago. He made that semi-final run at the US Open, I think back in 2021, really young kid, I think 20, 21 years of age. Back then you thought, okay, this kid, he's got something, right? Got the power, got the game. But then you see the new generation coming through, like Alcaraz and Sinner. It's like, how can they players like Felix and even you got Tsitsipas and Medvedev falling off the cliff, which is another story in itself. So I thought Felix, he's a real confidence player. You saw throughout the tournament as it progressed, as he got those wins, knocked off Zverev, beat Rublev. They were really impressive. And de Minaur faced a bit of adversity there. Demon arguably probably could have said that the game was on his racket, right? I mean, that 5-2 lead in the fourth, I think he had a set point in the second set as well from memory. So there were a lot of missed chances there for Demon, and it was sort of another tournament for that Aussie of like, what if, sort of a scenario. But for Felix, I think, like I said, he's a confidence player. When things go his way, he's a really, I guess, he can be an unstoppable force. And you even saw that in the second set against Sinner, right? In the semi-final when he took the second set 6-3. So, a lot of upside for Felix. Still very young. I think only, 23, 24. A lot of room for growth. But you're right. I mean, 5 years ago, you had the likes of Shapovalov even coming through in the next Canadian generation. Even on the women's side now, it's probably a bit more promising there with Mboko, obviously the latest name to arise. But Canadian tennis is doing something right. And I think Felix will have further opportunities, to go deep in Grand Slams. It's about whether he can take one of these and whether someone, not just Felix, but anyone can knock off Alcaraz and Sinner, because at the moment it just feels there's a gap. There's like Sinner, Alcaraz up here. You've got Djokovic around here, probably third best player, and then you got the rest of the field just down here. It's very hard to find a way to see anyone else winning a slam really at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, we see some glimpses from other guys at times, but trying to consistently put together those 7 matches or 6 matches and then essentially come up against, possibly Sinner and then Alcaraz or vice versa, which is kind of what you're looking at a Grand Slam, unless someone else can do you a favour, and then you're kind of relying on someone else to knock off one of them and then peaking at the right time. They just seem to be getting further ahead, and the rankings are showing that they're fighting out the number 1 ranking, while the 3 to 15 are just jostling for positions. You've only got to look again. And FAA, I think he's up to 13 now in the world. So if he can string some form together, we could see him in the top 10, and we'll wait and see what comes of it. Djokovic back into the top 4 after it, but look, it was a good US Open. There's a lot of talking points, and I think we talked about it off air. The number of withdrawals and a few other things. There's probably some talking points when we get to the end of the season and we can reflect on all of 2025 that I'm sure that you and I will pick apart, mate. But there's still some tennis to get through, and literally as we speak, the Davis Cup qualifiers the second round of those are getting underway. We've got a couple of the ties already started on Friday as we record this, and when we go through them, and we might just touch on those ones first in terms of the matchups. We've got the likes of, I think, maybe Japan in action against Germany already is one of the qualifiers that's already happening. There's some other matches happening as well around the trap. So it's one of the first ones to get started. But we'll just run through these, and at the end of the day, maybe just get your thoughts on, is it a lay down misere for someone that should advance, barring something anomalous. And so let's start with the Netherlands. They had a bye through the first round. They now come against Argentina, who beat Norway 3-2. How do you see that one shape up?
Tough one. I mean, which surface is that again? The Dutch and the Argentines? Because obviously surface is very important with these ties. I'm just trying to keep up with everything. because
so that one is being played on the indoor hard.
Indoor hard, yes, obviously advantage for the Dutch because Argentina, Sebastian Baez in particular, how good his clay form is. And then when he switches over to the hard court, he can, be very inconsistent. So I'd probably give the edge to the Dutch there. Botti van der Schalp, he's been had a really solid 2025. I thought one of the standouts for the Netherlands. And they were a country who even knocked off Spain in the quarters in the Davis Cup finals last year, which sort of spoiled the party with Rafa's farewell. Didn't expect that sort of early exit there. So Netherlands, they're a dangerous side. I'd probably tip them just to get through over Argentina, considering it's on the hard courts.
Excellent, mate. We will skip ahead to beyond the Australian game and we will head down because we'll break that down. Hungary, Austria is the next one up. And look, not two nations that have got, a whole lot of, top 20 sort of talent. But I would think Hungary shaping really well when you got Marizan and Fuchsovics coming into this.
I think Hungary are probably best positioned to go through here given the experience, especially Fuchsovics. I mean, he seems like he's been around for 20 odd years. He's still, fairly not young, but sort of in his sort of prime, right, where he's got that experience behind him at this Davis Cup level. You look at a team like Austria who, Sebastian Offner, for example, has obviously been around the block for quite a while, but they've got a few youngsters I've seen coming up but not quite ready to, I guess, hit that stage of defeating the likes of Hungary at a Davis Cup. So I think they're not quite there at the moment. I think for me, it's Hungary. Just given the experience and some of the players in that squad who've had pretty solid seasons, I'd tip them to come across the line.
Yeah, I think so too. Next one up, we see Japan taking on Germany. Japan, the hosts in this one. It'll be played on the hard courts, but I think even though we don't have the likes of Zverev in action, Jan-Lennard Struff, Yannick Hanfmann, and then we go to the doubles and they got Kevin Krajewicz and Tim Putz. Like the Germans have to be very short favourites. Japan do have Mochizuki, who we saw obviously at the US Open make a little bit of a run and start to make a name for himself as he creeps towards the top 100.
Yeah, it's not quite the same as without Kei Nishikori. I think he's obviously always held the hopes of Japan over years past, and that's why Japan have done relatively well in past seasons. But you can't look past Germany here. I mean, Tim Putz, for example, double specialist, and in some of these ties, it's going to come down to the doubles. And if you can tick that off and say, okay, that's pretty much a guaranteed victory, then that's one off, and you probably have to just rely on a couple of singles results. And Jan-Lennard Struff, he's had a bit of an up and down past 12, 18 months, but that US Open run has probably given me a bit more confidence that he's starting to find his best self and best form again. Making the round of 16 against Djokovic, albeit lost in straight sets, it was still a pretty positive campaign for him. So he'll take that into this Davis Cup, and expecting Germany to go through.
The next one, I think, this is one where there's a chance of an upset, but I think the Spanish still head in as favourites. They come up against Denmark. Now, the Spaniards, quite a number of players missing. Jean Mounard, their highest-ranked singles player. Pedro Martinez has been named. Carballes Baena and Carreno Busta. On the other side, Holger Rune is going to carry a lot of the expectation for the Danes. He's going to have to win both of his singles matches, you'd think, and we know he can be a bit mercurial. And then I'll be interested to know whether they go with Elmer Mola or August Holmgren, who we obviously saw make a bit of a run at Wimbledon. It's going to be a decision for their captain. The one thing that sits very much in Spain's favour here is the fact that it's on clay.
Massive, and especially without Alcaraz, right? I mean, that's the big storyline heading in. He announced on Spanish radio after his US Open win that he won't be present at the Davis Cup, which is obviously a big blow for Spain because I think this tilts it to more of a 50-50 contest, right? You've got Holger Rune, as you rightly said, going to be a massive piece of the puzzle here if Denmark are to progress through to the Davis Cup finals in November. So I'd probably even just say that Denmark, just based on Alcaraz and Granollers is again another key player, key component in the Spanish side with the doubles, that sort of put things out of whack for them as well. Yes, it's on clay, but I think Rune has enough to get it done. He might even play the doubles as well. Who knows? His hopes may solely be resting on his shoulders, the poor lad. So we'll wait and see, but it should be a cracking tie. It makes it more even without Alcaraz not playing, that's for sure.
It certainly does, and as you say, I think that's the one where there's the biggest chance of a sort of a bit of a left field upset, but it's going to take a lot from Rune and maybe a Holmgren or someone just to spring a bit of an upset, but it seems like one of those matches where it's primed. This next one, look, you can see why the Croats decided to take the French on clay, which on the surface of it, as we were talking about off air, normally you'd be like, that's a very puzzling decision, but they're going to be relying on Marin Cilic and Dino Prismic in terms of the singles. They do have Matej, Dodig in there. Ivan Dodig is the captain of the team. So, they've got a decent doubles pairing as well. But the French, Mpeshi Pericard, Mute, Bonzi, Rinderknecht, who we've all seen play some really good tennis in recent slams. So this is going to be a really interesting clash for mine. I think the French will still be favourites despite it being on clay. A lot of recent form, especially in those singles ties. The Croats are going to need Marin Cilic to go big, maybe an upset and win the doubles.
I know for Croatia point of view, Marin Cilic is going to be the big name and the big talking point. That's where your eyes are going to be set. But do not look past Dino Prismic. This guy has been absolutely unbelievable. If you have some time, like check him out. On YouTube, some of his highlights, even some of his results. I think he's made over the past couple of months, he's made at least 5 finals. Just ridiculous. Final after final. He's been super consistent. And if you remember, he faced Djokovic at the Australian Open a couple of years ago in the first round and took a set off him. And I heard a lot of people saying, okay, this kid's got something. He's a special talent. And on the clay, he's obviously been, grinding a lot of his games in the Challenger Tour over there. So that could suit his game style well. So expect him and Cilic to be the two single starters for Croatia. And you're right. I mean, France just aren't the same on clay, right? The likes of Pechi Pericard, who, loves to bomb the aces on the hard courts, clay, slower surface. He went out early in the French Open first round, I believe, to Damien Juma, if I'm not mistaken, someone low rank like that. So, yeah, the French are going to find it difficult, I think, for me. Mate Pavic as well, doubles, good doubles player with his partner as well in the doubles. That's another sort of tick for Croatia. Yeah, hard to look past them in this one on the clay. So, expecting a Croatia win.
The final one before we talk the Aussies, the USA versus Czechia. This is a huge matchup when you have a look at it. The USA have Taylor Fritz and Francis Tiafoe, 2 players inside the top 30. Czechs, they're going to have Thomas Mahac not playing the singles, ranked 22 in the world, because they've got Yuri Lehechka and Jakub Mensig playing. Mahac will play the doubles. And I'll tell you what about just the class of the names when you look at who the captains are? Bob Bryan and Thomas Berdych pulling the strings, a gun in the doubles, and obviously Berdych had a wonderful career. So Mahac and Pavlicek will play the doubles for Czechia, and it will be Rajiv Ram and Austin Krajicek. You've got a guy like Riley Opelka sitting in the wings as well, and this is, with not everyone out on deck for both these teams.
You're starting to get old when you see Thomas Berdych and Bob Ryan there as the team captains. It's like, where's the time gone? But this is going to be a mouth-watering clash, I think, from these two sides, Czechia and the USA. We know, obviously, the States, their depth has just been unbelievable, right? Throughout tennis history, you look at even the Billie Jean King Cup side with the women's. You got the top 3 women's, I believe, out there as well, not participating. They've still got a really strong core of players, a real strong list. So, expect that from the USA, but Czechia, this could be an upset, right? Mashash again in particular, players like that, Menjik, who won a Masters 1000 title back in March, he's starting to come to the fore and really starting to immerse himself in this new generation, not with Sinner and Alcaraz, but just behind and trying to, barge down the door. So obviously they've got a lot of talent coming through, and you see players like Fritz and Tiafoe who are prone to throw in, some unexpected losses. And this could be one where it's been a long season, long schedule. You touched on a lot of withdrawals at the US Open. This could be one where, tired legs, Czechia, the door could be ajar for them.
It certainly could. I think that one's the one I'm most excited about, outside, obviously, of the next clash, which is Australia versus Belgium. This one will be played in Sydney on the hard courts. Looking forward to seeing this. Obviously, the Aussies headlined by Alex Demon or Jordan Thompson will play the other legs of the singles. And then Rinky Hijikata and John Peers is our doubles combination. Alex Vukic sits there in reserve. The Belgians aren't to be completely underestimated here. Zizou Bergs, we've seen him make a little bit of a run, and he can be a bit of a handful on some of these courts. At a few of the slams more recently, and Collignon's managed to sort of work his way up and hold a spot inside the top 100 as well. And they've got a couple of doubles players there in Gill and Vliegen who, again, inside the top 100 in doubles. So they'll be, keeping Hijikata and Peers honest. But the Aussies really have to be aiming to win this one reasonably comfortably, I would have thought.
I look at this list, and every time Australia's playing, especially in these early rounds, I go, right, Alex de Minaur to fairly should be comfortable wins. We know he takes up an extra gear when he plays for his country. I mean, if you tick those 2 wins off, that's a 2-0 lead. I don't want to look too ahead, but that's realistically on paper, that should be the case. And then you just look at Jordan Thompson, for example, having to win one of his 2 singles rubbers, which he is definitely more than capable of doing. Doubles as well. We know we have a rich history. Rinky Hijikata coming in for his Davis Cup debut, which is really great to see, off the back of, well, unfortunately, a couple of injuries. Alexi Popperin with a back complaint, and Matty Ebden with an elbow injury. Leighton Hewitt confirmed a couple of days ago, which is very unfortunate for them both, but it gives a chance for a player like Rinky to prove his worth in the doubles, which is always going to be the case, right? With Ebden out, Rinky won the doubles title with Jason Kubler a couple of years back at the Australian Open, very experienced, made the Wimbledon final as well a few months back. So he's more than ready for this occasion, albeit he's just come back off an injury himself, Rinky. And you remember he lost in straight sets in both the singles and the doubles. But all in all, yeah, Belgium can't be underestimated. This is sort of a side, like you said, Zizou Bergs has had a season he could be proud of as well, with a few deep runs at a couple of tournaments as well, which has been great for him. But all in all, especially on paper, considering all that's happened behind the scenes with the whole Leighton Hewitt fiasco, that shouldn't really be a huge distraction for this team. I'm expecting Australia to get the job done rather comfortably.
Yeah, look, the Belgians are led by someone who we know is really passionate, the way he used to play his tennis in Steve Darcis as well. So he'll be doing absolutely everything he can. He'll be very much talking them into being the underdogs, bit of resilience. But again, as you say, Alex de Minaur, a consistent top 10 player. We've seen him making quarterfinals of most of the major tournaments. John Peers and Rinky Hijikata, 2 major winners, a gold medal winner in John Peers from the Olympics. He's won the Tour finals, all these sorts of things. So experience and ability should see us go through. I'm looking forward. I'm going to get down to the first day of matches, which is tomorrow as this goes out. So really looking forward to it. And obviously for all of these teams, the goal is to win this tie, and you head through to the Davis Cup finals a little bit later this year, where your second team, we'll call them, Christian, sit in wait.
Yeah, Italy hosting the Davis Cup finals, obviously in Bologna. Obviously, over the past few years, it's been in Spain, in Malaga. So that's the switch has been made there. So I believe the next 5 years, it's going to be hosted there in Bologna, which is obviously great news for Italy there. Automatic qualification for Italy, which is obviously great there as well. So 7 other nations are vying to join them for November. I believe it starts on the 18th and finishes on roughly the 23rd. So yeah, look, Australia, it's always been the case of for them, when are we going to win the Davis Cup again? I mean, back-to-back finals a few years back, I think 2022, 2023. I think Hewitt's done a great job with this side. It's just, has he sort of reached his ceiling with this squad? What more can he do? Do you need fresh ideas? I think that's something that I've, raised, I think, to myself and a few others, that, I don't know, maybe they have to go down maybe a different path or direction. We'll wait and see, but I'm just looking forward to see who's going to make up that final 8, because, it should be a cracking Davis Cup finals in November.
Yeah, I think I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, it's ridiculous that someone gets an automatic qualification. I'm like, I think we can probably excuse Italy when we allow that they've got, I think, 2 players in the top 10, 4 in the top 30, 9 in the top 100. Like, Italian tennis is in a pretty good spot. I know you keep reminding me of that, but they are going really well. And at the end of the day, the disappointing thing is the reality of the way the tournaments work is that we're probably never, under the current format, going to get to host them in Australia again. That's just the way the cookie kind of crumbles.
Yeah, you can't see it either, because it's basically with the schedule, right? You're not going to get players flying to Australia, going back on holidays and flying back to Australia for the January swing. It's got to change with the calendar.
We've seen Christian, have a nice few month holiday. It's a nice place to be.
Well, we've seen the Billie Jean Cup move from November to September, right, which I think has been an interesting move. They're playing in China next week, which we'll quickly touch on as well a bit shortly. But I don't know, that's probably the way forward maybe for Davis Cup if Australia is to have a chance to host. But if it stays in November, I think there's close to no chance that we're going to be hosting, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just think, as you say, that even in September, I think the travel of getting that many players, and we've got 8 teams to Australia twice in the year, even a few months apart. The only chance we'd have is if they brought it further forward between all in the earlier gap after the Australian Open. Because
it does align with that Asian swing, though, doesn't it? With the Japan, got China. It does make a bit of sense.
Yeah, but logic and sports administration don't go hand in hand, so...
Correct.
You mentioned the Billie Jean King Cup. There's been some updates, and you kind of alluded to this before. They will kick off in a few days. So basically, you can go Davis Cup into Billie Jean King Cup. if you're looking for the Aussies, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait till later when the next round of Billie Jean King Cup shapes up for 2026 for the Aussies to be in action, because they did lose to Kazakhstan in Brisbane earlier this year. But we've got, let me see if I can reel this off: China, Kazakhstan, Great Britain, Italy, Spain, Ukraine, US, and Japan are our 8 teams. But the US is probably where the biggest news has come out of in the lead up to this tournament. A few players resting, but still a pretty handy team when you have a look at it. I think they've got 2 either current or very close to current top 10 players in that team still.
Like I said before, their depth is just off the charts, both in the men's and women. So, on the women's side here, players going out. So Coco Gauff will be unavailable, along with Amanda Anisimova and Madison Keys. Those are 3 top quality players, right? All 3 of them have made Grand Slam finals this year. Just put that into perspective, and they're not all going to be there yet. You see, the list, the roster that the USA have put out is Jessica Pegula, Emma Navarro, McCartney Kessler, who's had a pretty decent 2025, Haley Baptiste, and Taylor Townsend, which is also, obviously a double specialist as well in singles. We saw her capabilities, at the US Open recently, then captained by Lindsay Davenport. I think looking at all those 8 squads, I think US go in as favourites for me still. And that's crazy to think that I just listed those 3 players out. Just remarkable. So, then Naomi Osaka as well, another absentee for Japan. That's going to be a big loss for the tournament. And Kim Win Zheng is the other one for China. She had the elbow surgery a couple months back. So that was really going to be expected, right? Going to be a tough timeline for her to come back in time in September. So a few disappointing outs for the event, but nonetheless, it still should be a great event.
Yeah, I think so. I think, there's some really good cases for a few of these countries. Look at Kazakhstan. Again, we saw them beat Australia earlier this year, and they've got obviously Elena Rybakina, Yulia Putintseva leading off their line. The Italian team, I'm sure you'll spruik their abilities. Jasmine Paolini,
defending champions.
Yeah, well, Cocchiaretto, Branchetti, as you said, the US team stacked. Katie Boulder and Sunay Cartel leading the way for Great Britain. Ukraine's one that interests me. If they find their best form, they could absolutely shake this up. Svitolina, Kostyuk, Starobdupseva, there's some decent players there who probably, again, I used this word earlier and I love using it, is mercurial. But if they find close to their best and string it together for the whole tournament, they can beat anyone here. And of course, I did miss the Spanish there with Buzas Moniro and Paula Badosa.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ukraine take. It's got to have to take Svitolina and Kostyuk in particular. They're going to have to really carry the workload, obviously, if they're to sort of, make a deep run there. But even Spain as well. Paula Badosa, she's in the list, but we don't know with her injury status, right? She's been on and off all year, unfortunately, due to multiple injuries. Just can't stay consistent whatsoever. So probably have to be close to drawing a line through them in terms of their realistic chances. But there are a few teams, as you rightly named, that they're in the hunt here. It's pretty open, but like I said before, USA for me, given everything and putting that into context there, for me, the favourites.
Yeah, I think it opens right up when you have a look and you realise that Pegula, Paolini and Rybakina are the only top 10. Then you've got, Svitolina's the next one down on the rankings who's going to be in action, and then Navarro and then Badosa. So there's only half a dozen really of the top 20. There's a lot of players then in the 20s to 40s that are going to be involved. But it means it's nice and open. It is disappointing that we don't have all the best, but obviously the likes of, obviously Russia can't compete. Poland, Iga Swiatek's a dominant force by herself. These sorts of pieces, Zheng Xinwen, as you said, she's out of action. But I think that it's worked out quite well where it's a little bit open. We're not going into this. I think if the USA had all of their best players, you'd be kind of like it's theirs to lose.
Yeah, for sure. And you're still saying that now, right? With the players they've got out, it's like, for me, at this moment in time, it's still for them to lose, which is absolutely crazy to say.
It is crazy to say. 3 top 10 players out. Sophia Kenin not in action as well. They've got, I think, 6 of their top probably 10 players aren't playing, but they've still got all these players there. So absolutely wild. But Christian Montegan, as always, a big thank you. We said we'd try and do this in 20 as usual. We took 10 minutes longer. That's just you and I just talking. That's what we do. If people want to catch more tennis, they can obviously check out thefirstserve.com.au or find The First Serve on any of their social media platforms, mate, where they'll find your wonderful writing, keeping up to date with everything that's going on.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the button down below. Hit the bell as well, because that will get you updates when we drop all of our episodes. And you can find us on social media, on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, at The Chris Mack Show. Until our next episode drops, a big thank you for tuning in to your home of the black and white on sport. No greys here.